Well, thank you. Thanks for coming today.
Pleasure. I wouldn't miss it.
You had a big day today already.
I'm used to long days. It's fun.
Well, you're certainly not retired.
No, that's right. I've used different words. I said I was retired, as in a car, but actually I just stepped away from the NBA and I'm on to my next career.
Well, with your next career, your company is called Micromanagement Ventures, correct?
Sad to say, that is true.
What and why did you call it that?
I didn't call it that. I was a member of the firm of Proskauer, Rose, Getz, and Mendelsohn. Now it's called Proskauer Rose. It's got its own fancy logo. And I withdrew from that firm to join the NBA in 1978. And that firm continued to represent the NBA, because I had represented the NBA along with many others. And so some years later, after 30 some odd years, 12 at Proskauer plus 30 as commissioner plus 6, give or take 50 years, when I decided to make my first venture investment, I said, how do you think I should do it? They said, you should start just a plain corporation. I said, okay, good. I had already agreed to invest in one company. I remember which one it was. I said, just form something for me and give it a name. And I don't know where they got the idea that it should be called Micromanagement Ventures. And they thought it was so funny. And so there I am. And I said, this is a pretty good name. I wrote some checks, and people said, oh my God, is that true? Should we take the money? But anyway, my former partners got their revenge.
So you and John Kozner run Micromanagement Ventures together. And
actually, John runs it. I just sort of hang out there. He allows me to, come in occasionally, but he's a laboring oar.
You sound very familiar to my partner, John Powell. He says the same thing to me.
Well, I met him, and we didn't even have to speak of it. We knew it.
He makes Ryan and I do all the work, So what is a typical day for you now? As you used to be. I'd love to hear what it was like to be commissioner, but what's it like what you do today?
Well, I am we'll call the word senior advisor to Graycroft Partners, which is a venture capital firm that has about $1.5 billion under investment. And on Mondays, they go through the deal board and go for 2 or 3 presentations by startups or people looking to raise a Series A or from the growth fund or something. And I think I still have a couple of cards there that say intern. That's what they called me. And the owner of the head of the firm at the time I began sitting in with them, Alan Patrikoff, knew De Niro. And he had dubbed me an intern before De Niro made the movie, so he took me to lunch with De Niro, so that was a highlight. But it says Mondays are spent mostly at Graycroft. And after a couple of months, I said, guys, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll give you my API, and you give me your SDK, and your ARR, and your MRR. I said, this is a foreign language. In fact, I was so happy. I went in about 3 months ago, I said, I got a new term for you. TLA. What's a TLA? 3-letter acronym. So you can all have it. They're throwing around TLAs like it's going out of business. And so I do that, and that takes off Mondays. And Fridays, I try to take off, which is a synonym for working at home in the morning when my wife is at her bar class, but then I'm okay for the rest of the day. And my Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are just packed because I'm also an advisor to an investment bank, PJT Partners. I have a continuing relationship with the NBA. I have Micromanagement Ventures, and I'm on the board of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which supports the HBCUs. I'm on the board of Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I say to Wynton Marsalis, you're the missionary, I'm the mercenary, and I'm now the head of the marketing committee. That was my reward, and I'm on the board of the Paley Center. So amongst the three, I'm busy. I'm actually probably, if you wanted to have lunch, I could do it in January. Don't feel sorry for me because I'm going to take 2.5 weeks off to go skiing in Colorado, but in December into January. But I'm busier than I've ever been with a lot of stuff. And today I was at the Lazard conference. I had the pleasure of listening to Rupert Murdoch say that his Hannity never tells untruths. And my wife knew. She said, I know where you're going. Don't you ask the question. I said, okay. But but at the end, I raised my hand. Unfortunately, I wasn't called on, so it was okay.
Well, you talked about acronyms. You know, one of the funny things in the venture capital business is they always talk about this MVP. And I say, the only MVP I know is from sports. And they always, and a lot of times you'll hear this, we're making a pivot. I thought pivots only happen on basketball courts.
Oh, no. Pivot is a whole guy. You know, that's the beginning, usually of the end, but sometimes not. We have a company, we have a company called Whoop in the micromanagement portfolio, and it sold its wristband, hardware. You should never invest in hardware. And then along the way, when it was about $9 million in ARR, it pivoted and started giving the watch away but selling the subscription, and then it became an SaaS company, as in SaaS, and all of a sudden, by year end, they're going to hit $45 million in revenue. And so pivot was a good thing. In some cases, it really enhances value, and I'm learning.
Well, we're both investors in and friends with Davion Ross from Shot Tracker.
I think my friendship is going better than my investment. That's all I have to say. Where are you, Davion?
He was waiting for that one.
Okay. He's a good friend.
I mean...
Investment, not so much, but it's okay.
I mean, come on. You're gonna see...
I could give you the spiel. I've given it 100 times. Sub-second latency. Perfect for the world that we're going to have with gaming. Much better than Second Spectrum, which is a delay. And you can get, through their algorithm, you can get an analysis of the game that you can't possibly get anyplace else. And the coaches are going to love it because the fans in the stands are going to have on their cell phone the ability to know that the coach has the wrong lineup in based upon the first half, okay? The coaches are going to love it. And my grandmother used to ask, from this you make a living? I don't know. I'm trying to set Davion straight. But it's a great product, and I think it's unique in the sports field. And I do believe in it, but I would invest just for the right to bust Davion's chops.
Well, he certainly enjoys his time with you.
I wish it wasn't so intense.
Well,
we're available in a crisis, and the crises are continuous. But I worked it out well. I said, John, do me a favor. Call Davion and Bruce, Yanni, his partner. They're doing a great job. They really are.
I mean, talk about tech.
You are a co-investor with us.
Thank you. Yes,
we put in some real money. We just are tagging along.
I'm so happy you're so bullish about this company.
I actually am, believe it or not. I think, if they get through a couple of tunnels that they're going through, they think there's a light on the other end, but it's actually a train coming in.
Well, it's good. It's a good thing we have Magic Johnson with us in the investment as well.
I feel guilty about that, actually. I don't feel so guilty about you, but Magic I feel guilty about. No, go ahead.
So tech on the benches, right? iPads will be on the benches this year.
Only in the Western Athletic Conference.
And the Big 12.
And the Big 12, that's correct.
And some of the AAC games.
Yes.
And some of the ACC games.
What an enlightened organization the NCAA turned out to be.
Oh, boy. Are we going down that path?
No.
Well, let's talk about sports betting. You mentioned sort of the use of this data that could be used in the future. You know, you were the commissioner of the NBA when it was illegal, other than in Nevada, to have sports betting. Then,
It gets better than that. I testified as commissioner, that's how old I am, in favor of the legislation that was declared unconstitutional in the year of our Lord 2017 or something like that.
wow. Well, now it's legal in 19 states. 13 states are live, and it's happening. And you have Brian Musburger here from VEASAN, who's still shaking in his boots from the days when he was representing Phil Jackson and you were finding Phil or whatever you're doing with.
You know, Phil got away with murder. You know, if I had to do it over again, I would suspend him.
Was that when he was with the Bulls, Lakers, or
Oh,
both?
The Bulls. You know, one of the things, and I want everybody to think about this, I always was much gentler with coaches than maybe sometimes people thought I should be, because I was part of in my view, you either have to be crazy to be a coach or it makes you crazy. And in the playoffs, whatever you have wrong with you gets intensified to the max. And when the Knicks would be playing the Bulls and the Knicks lose, Pat Riley would say, oh, that's because NBC wanted another game. And then Phil would lose the next game and say, well, that's because the NBA wanted another game and they told their officials to do this or that or something like that. And I said to myself, you know, guys, they're just behaving like coaches in the playoffs. The moon is full, and they're baying at the commissioner. And I think that actually contributed to fans questioning the authenticity and integrity of the referees. So that's what I mean by I would do it again a little differently, because they didn't mean to. They were just pushing the way coaches do. You know, you tell the coach that you can't do X, they go up to the line and they try to go over it until they get caught. And that's just the way it was. And it was the same way with the officiating as well. And they thought that we actually gave the referees instructions about what to do. The only instruction I ever gave in 30 years as commissioner was to one official to say, please, you really have to call defensive three. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you're allowed to not call it. That's it. Never had another substantive word with an official other than to tell them, have a good game and stay healthy.
So on the topic of sports betting, you talk about sort of the coaches, there's the integrity side of the industry and how that plays out, making sure that the games are truly on the up and up, and they are, as you just said. You know, what do you see as the opportunity there for leagues now? I mean, with Adam now in control at the NBA and really embracing this and.
Well, I think, you know, back in the day, whenever that was, that day, if you went to advertising firms and said, we want to promote our league, they would say to you, here's our research, and it tells us that for you to extend the viewership or expand the viewership of your game, you can't get someone who's not a basketball fan to watch a game. Don't waste your money on it. Maybe you could, but it would be too expensive. The only thing you can do is take someone who is a fan and watches 2 games and get him or her to watch 3. And once they're watching, get them to watch longer. Ta-da, center stage, enter sports betting, where some people who never would watch a game might decide that they're going to watch the last quarter and maybe make a proposition bet. And I guess it's good for the league as long as Nielsen registers their viewing. And you get others who are watching it, but who are going to watch it longer, because if they're bettors, there's action throughout the game, and they're going to stay a little bit longer. And so when you take those 3 things and you get the entry of sponsors, I mean, you know, who hadn't noticed that FanDuel and DraftKings were beating each other's brains out as though they were banging stacks of thousands of dollar bills on them. And when you add to that, William Hill and MGM and lots of others, there's a whole new sponsor category. So I think it's in the intermediate run, it's going to make sports leagues more valuable, increase player salaries, and be a supercharge for the league, the values.
So you mentioned just now players' salaries, and you have in the room here, we have one of your NBA Hall of Fame greats and our Athlete Venture Group member, Ralph Sampson, back there.
I thought he looked familiar. That's the guy, I saw him at the Hall of Fame.
He's kind of tall, that guy, right?
Yeah, he always was.
And you have this movement today where there are athletes who are really thinking about themselves as entrepreneurs and investors. Our partner here at 76 Capital, Ryan Howard, is a great example of that. You have what Magic's doing, what Kobe and LeBron, all these players getting into the business world. What are your thoughts around that, and how can they be even more impactful in the future?
Well, I think it's absolutely spectacular that they're doing that. I think it's incumbent upon the leagues and the union to educate players about the opportunities in and around sports. I was always focused originally more narrowly, like how not to have people take your money away from you by inducing you to invest in restaurants and car washes, because those don't turn out to be as profitable as they might. And I thought that by expanding with what was then the NBA Development League, the WNBA, we were winding up providing enormous opportunities for players as they made their way through different stages of their careers. But I think it's great that players are now focusing to some degree on their, pardon the expression, put it in quotes, brands. And I think it's a good thing that they use social media effectively. And I think it's even better that they're smart enough, and they've always been smart, to seek the kind of advice that gets them into, investments, and not just buying stocks, but hiring people to watch out for the potential venture returns that by the time they would normally see those ventures have already been repriced. And so I think it's only good, and it's good for the sport also.
So one of our themes today has been it started this morning with Brian Westbrook with his keynote, and it's been talked about a bunch today.
What was he wearing?
Brian was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt and a blazer. I know you in the dress code. We're talking the dress code now, the NBA dress code?
I'm the dress code guy, but I'm more interested in the fact that these guys are fashion plates. They're in GQ and in Esquire and in Vanity Fair, and they, KD has a new backpack suddenly, or RWB is wearing glasses without glass. They're style icons, and I think that's kind of neat also.
It's pretty incredible, and I think one of the things that has been talked about is the fact that we're talking about giving more opportunities to women, minorities, helping others. It's something that we really care about here at 76 Capital. I know that was a big thing that you did at the NBA, was to start NBA Cares. And I think that it's something that we think is an important thing in doing business, and also making sure that we're helping others as well.
I couldn't agree more. I've recently the conference roundtable, I guess it was, announced that signed on by a number of companies, announced the sort of perspective and view that business was more than simply business, that you had to worry about your employees, your customers, your suppliers, the community in which you operated, and the greater community. And that's been a kind of a controversial thing amongst businesses, because it runs against what the economist Milton Friedman wrote about, which is the business of business is business, and you should worry only about shareholder value. But my reaction was, we started saying that 20 years ago. The government cannot do what has to be done. And if private enterprises don't participate in what has to be done, it's all over. And so, that led to, I started preaching to the owners when we had no such thing as a community relations coordinator on teams. And I was very proud. I didn't care. I said, guys, it's good for business and it's the right thing to do. I don't care whether you're doing well or doing good. Just do it. And gradually, all of our teams hired community relations coordinators. And then we started pairing with every kind of NGO you can think of, Special Olympics, Share Our Strength, anti-child abuse. We did a great spot with Mark Eaton leaning down and saying, how do you think your kid feels when you get in his face? I'm scared. I saw Mark Eaton is the biggest human being I ever was associated with. And finally, one day, we were sitting around, and people are telling us, well, you should affiliate with the United Way. You're not going to get credit for what you're going to do. I won't repeat verbatim what I said about at that moment, but it did lead to us saying, you know what? We're not changing what we do. We're just going to change what we call it. We're going to call it NBA Cares. And everything that any player or team or we do is going to be wrapped under that umbrella. And it actually was much more impactful than we ever expected it to be. That NBA Cares came in a certain way to define us, and we had governments from around the world calling us and asking us whether we would send a player. So Clyde went to Italy to talk about HIV, and other players traveled to Africa, and Dikembe traveled the entire world, as did Bob Lanier. And people looked to the NBA and its players. And the players caught the wind as well, and they began forming their own foundations. And it has really been very healthy for the league, good for the players, and great for the public that we help.
Well, certainly really applaud you for all the work that you've done in that world. Our time is up, but I wanted to ask you, we've been having so much fun here.
I want to interview you now. What the hell is going on here?
All right,
let's go.
Let's go.
I'm kidding.
John, do we have more time? All right.
No, go ahead. Whatever you want.
I got to ask the boss,
Yeah, I understand.
You know how it is, John? I see him over there. That John, he was on his phone. So what, to wrap up, I'd love to hear from you what maybe your favorite moment or most exciting thing from being commissioner. What was the most exciting thing that ever happened as commissioner of the NBA?
You're going to see that I'm totally crazy. But the most exciting thing, well, there were two most exciting moments. One was in 1993. We were planning a trip to South Africa, and it was before Nelson Mandela was president, but a couple of years after he had been released from Robben Island. And it was violent still. The Zulus and the ANC, there were killings in the hostels, etc. And a lot of our players dropped out. And I said to my wife, I said, listen, if we're sending a group and it's dangerous, we better go. And that says something about me, but forget about it. And so we went. And before we went, we said, apartheid is still the official policy of the government of South Africa. Are you sure that we should go? And my folks came back and said, we're being invited by the National Olympic Committee of South Africa, which is a post-apartheid organization. And the ANC says that Nelson Mandela will stop by to say hello to the dinner. I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. So let's go. We went. The night of the dinner, I was getting dressed, and the head of security, Horace Balmer, calls up and says, hey, David, Nelson Mandela would like to visit with you. So I called Charlie Grantham, who was the head of the unit, and said, Charlie, put your pants on. Nelson Mandela is coming up to my room. We're going to sit with the great man. And sure enough, knock on the door. At the time, I was told by security, NBA and ANC, that he never goes into rooms because they were worried for his life. He never came at the time that he was supposed to because they always moved him around. And I got to sit with Nelson Mandela for 45 minutes.
Wow. Wow.
It was the opportunity of a lifetime and really informed some of the things that we did at the NBA in terms of social responsibility. Mr. Mandela said to us, and he taught me some things. One, I'm glad you didn't bring books because we kept our kids out of school as part of the protest. I didn't know that. I didn't remember that or something. But I do believe, he said, that sports keeps kids out of trouble and brings people together. So when you heard, just to tie it together, Adam Silver say that sports can bring people together in the face of this China situation, he was not like hoofing it. He was repeating something that was been imbued in the NBA, embedded, because we believed it. And if those of you, I'm sure most of you have seen the movie Invictus, where Nelson Mandela, played by Morgan Freeman or someone, went and supported the Springboks, the rugby team of South Africa, which was predominantly white. But he was going to be there and walked out on the field because it was going to bring the country together. That was a very interesting moment. And I said, the only question I had that was the least bit relevant, I said, Mr. Mandela, you're so calm. Why aren't you angrier? I don't understand it. Because he turned out to be the only man who could have made the transition. He said, because if you were here 2 years ago, I would have been in jail. If you were here last year, I'd be out of jail and I would be making contributions. Now they make no decision without me. And if you come back next year, I'm going to be president. Okay, that works for me. And in fact, I did go to the Mandela inauguration. It was quite a moving event. And so that was like a high point. And the second high point, you'll get a trend here. When Magic Johnson announced that he was HIV positive, it was earth-shattering or league-shattering for me, because it was a complex situation at the intersection of not being able to test other players against the law, docs who couldn't know whether the patients they were operating on were HIV positive, Karl Malone ultimately announcing he wasn't going to play with someone, the Australian Olympic team announcing they weren't going to play against the U.S., and we embraced Magic. And I had one team suggest that we were ahead of the curve, we should do some polling. And I said, that's not happening, we have an opportunity to lead here. But growing out of that, when Magic became the MVP of the All-Star game in Orlando, and I got the opportunity to hug him. So there was a lesson to the world that you don't get HIV by perspiration. It was the highlights of my commissionership. It was terrific. And I was there when Michael did this, or Larry did that, or the slam dunk here, or the three-point there. They were fun. But these were, for me, and for the league somewhat, life-changing, because we understood that we could really make a difference.
Incredible, incredible. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
The great David Stern, everybody. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.